please remember to like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell. All of the YouTube things, just hit all of the buttons, except the dislike button. Don't hit that one. Let's get into the actual moves that the Nuggets made, because I think that the roster has fundamentally shifted in terms of which positions were prioritized. So, on our last episode, Will, I was pretty visibly very tense about the lack of clarity, certainty with where the Nuggets were going to go this offseason. Not necessarily what they were trying to do, because there's all this news in the air that they're pursuing this free agent and trying to get Russell Westbrook in a trade, but nothing had been actually done yet. Then right after our show, they did sign Dario Šarić, which was a big deal because there, was news that maybe he was going to go to a EuroLeague club, or, he might have gone to another team. But do you, for you, because I don't actually know how tense you were, I just know it was less than me. For you, does the Dario signing change or improve the vibes about the Nuggets offseason at all?
I think it does. I mean, we needed depth in the front court. Now we have a lot of people in the front court, which is kind of interesting. That's a whole discussion in itself. I mean, as soon as we signed Dario, I thought, does that mean Vlatko's not coming back? And so that was kind of an interesting question and something that I was prepared to maybe be sad about. I think with me and why I was calm is a lot of the times in NBA, where there's smoke, there's fire kind of with these deals. And you kind of hear about them in the rumors and they kind of usually happen. It's rare where I'm really surprised. Maybe the Mikal Bridges trade definitely surprised me. I knew there was the Villanova connection, but I just it actually being executed kind of surprised me. And that was just a fun big trade.
That move was like Twitter coming to life, though.
Yeah,
it
just
wasn't
like a dream scenario trade.
Expected them to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a list of things I wanted to happen in the offseason, and there still was room for those things to be done. And I just felt like Dario Šarić. I don't know. I just heard a thing about how you should pronounce it today, Šarić. He was signed, and there's the Russell Westbrook rumors, which we had been talking ourselves kind of into Westbrook and Dario, which it's not like they're slam dunk signings. They still have questions about them and how they're going to be played. So I don't know if it's just because we had that kind of drought of the lack of announcements that now that there's anything, it's pleasing the fans because they just wanted something. They want the roster to be complete. And so I feel like the vibes were high just announcing a signing, just that something happened was nice for Nuggets fans. So I was just kind of in a patient mode. I knew something was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. So
I mean, it had to. We were getting incomplete roster charges.
Yes.
No, I mean, I agree. Like I said on the last show, I think the thing that was bothering me the most, and probably was bothering most of Nuggets Nation online, the very online portion, the most, was the lack of uncertainty, whether they would admit it or not. Because, for the past year and some that I've been a part of this fan base, I've witnessed them be able to turn on a dime and start coping as soon as they knew what the situation was going to be. And that's how I felt. That's what I felt happened as soon as the Dario signing was announced. Oh yeah, we're the league let us get this demon. I can't believe it. This, that, and the other. Matt, you're inside of the organization. And I don't know what intel you could give us about how the front office is thinking about this signing, but something that a lot of fans have been talking about is Dario being used as sort of like a mini Jokic-lite for the bench, finally being able to have a backup, big, whether you think of him as a center or not, that is able to, be this Jokic facsimile in the minutes when he is off the floor, so that all of these other players that are assembled on this team that are these really good Jokic ball guys, not a ton of on-ball skill on this team right now, but everyone plays really well off the ball, for the most part. And that has been seen as sort of maybe where the disconnect is between the Jokic minutes and the non-Jokic minutes. Do you feel that Dario can be that? Do you think that that's how the front office is thinking about the Dario signing? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Booth loves skilled bigs. I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is he really likes big skilled players. I think that's been the hallmark of his tenure. Although the first year he kind of targeted athleticism, but since then it's been a lot of bigger skilled players. So what I like, Denver, right? They run a lot of their offense through their bigs. Especially we've seen a little bit through DeAndre, but obviously mostly Jokic. To me, I really like that you can continue to do that stuff with Dario. So this is a delay or 5-out setup. Denver could run something like this. They'll do some 5-out stuff, maybe not as spread as this clip, because obviously Clay and Steph are there, but they will do things like this. So they're basically having Dario up top, initiate everything, and then just the two guys on each side, perimeter players, wings, forwards, guards, whatever, are making decisions from there. And this is just an alignment that Denver can go to. They'll do this stuff all the time with Jokic up top. Many times he'll be at the top of the key rather than at the top of the arc, but these are just kind of setups that are going to be really familiar. I think especially when you have a lot of young players, it is good to try to have some continuity from lineup to lineup. And that's the appeal, right, of bringing in somebody like Dario is, hey, you can give Jokic a rest, and it doesn't feel like this seismic change of like, all right, well, now we're going to run high pick and roll through, DeAndre Jordan for 10 minutes or handoffs through Zeke. Like, it is kind of like, we're going to continue to do the same thing. Our young players are used to playing this way, and there's more of them this year. And it's just not going to be like, all right, now what, right? Like, now, because sometimes there are games where you're watching the Nuggets and there's kind of like this, like, okay, what are we doing now that Nikola's sitting? Okay, we're going to do this. Like, no, like now you can play kind of the same way and have a guy like this who's so good at, you could play on the clip if you want, finding cutters like that. Like, that's just like a read that I think will be there. And that's the appeal of bringing somebody like Dario in. This is another that's another like 5-out read, sort of three in or 1 out. Sorry, 1 in, 4 out with Dario there, but it's an easy read there. So a lot of like the formations and setups will feel pretty similar to what they've been doing.
Yeah, his ability to just find those reads is very Jokic-like, and I'm glad we're talking about this too, because this is like every Nuggets fan dream is just like bring someone in where the bench players, if they're playing with Jokic or not, whether they're like playing with a staggered starter or whatever, or they're just getting those reps with Jokic and like the off-ball play, to have a center or someone we can bring in for him is going to be huge.
For sure. And like every single newcomer, not every, but most newcomers that come in, they're like, it is such a huge change to go from whatever your former team to playing with Jokic, because you're getting passes you're not expecting, and you're, in situations where you're so open, it's kind of like what is going on in a way. Like, you almost second guess it. I remember Reggie talked about that a lot last year. Justin talked a little bit about it too. So continuing to play through a big who is so good at finding guys, I think in a way will ease that a little bit, even just in game, where it's like, it doesn't feel like the seismic shift. That's a nice little entry pass there. It'll be good, like, to have somebody that can find guys inside. So if you have Aaron Gordon on the floor with him, you can have Dario make those entry pass reads and kind of find guys from there. This
was cool.
What did I get on here?
Crossing up Naz Reid.
Šarić a little behind the back on Naz Reid, and then just takes him in, uses the shoulder to get a nice hook shot.
I think I just wanted to show him cooking Naz Reid.
Well, that's perfect. I actually just posted about that because I knew Nuggets fans were going to want to know, is he going to take it to Naz specifically? This is the hurdle we have to get over.
I was seeing somewhere, I don't know where I saw it. Maybe it was a Warriors fan, or it could have been comments. I did a lot of like Dario research over the last couple of days, and they were saying like he really took it to Naz in that game. And I'm like, good, man, because Naz was a pain in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
damn Wolves series.
Exactly.
He's a good player. Also, I mean, the biggest thing is that he's such a, his equity as a like offensive player is his game as a pick and pop player. He's 36% from 3 last year. He can set screens. He can slip out and beat closeouts. This one, he's wide open. He literally is. You can see he's almost surprised with how open he is. So
he's like, oh, you're gonna leave me open, and then he knocked it down like confidently, right?
He's a shooter. That's a big thing. If you double off him one pass away, like Minnesota does here, he can make that look. So
it's he's even the Minnesota, and they're clogging the paint here on this shot. You have that 5-out option with him, which is definitely going to be huge for the Nuggets.
I agree. There's one, I think, this is the rescreen. Told you we were going to talk about screening. Nice little rescreen. Doesn't have the angle. Sets up. Looks like a simple play, but like this is super valuable to have as somebody that is going to know, hey, my angle isn't great here. Let me reset this. And then I'm just going to pop behind the arc. Looks confident, no hesitation. Shot goes up. And
using a screen to get himself open, like screening to get himself open.
Yep. So again, just having like that go-to play, that is going to be something that you're going to see a lot from Denver. You know, it might be something that, hey, that might work really well with Westbrook, right? Like if a team tries to duck under a screen against Westbrook, you know, he can kind of use that player to get in the way, you know, kind of how Jokic does of his man or vice versa, and then get open for three. So just having a guy that can do that. I'm curious to see how that looks, because I was kind of sitting like thinking about all the guys that Russ has played with. And it's not like a lot of pick and pop picks. It's really not. It's like Steven Adams, Clint Capella a little bit, although they kind of shelved that and then went PJ Tucker. Last year is what Zubac and Tice, I guess, kind of.
Tice, yeah, I guess Tice is like the only one
who's like sort of like, I guess he's a pick and pop guy, but not like Dario. I think it was
right.
Ryan Black.
There's not a lot of offense running through Tice because it usually like Paul George was sharing the floor with those guys in those lineups as well.
They could have made it work when he was in with the Lakers with Anthony Davis if they ever played him at 5, but they never would do it. When
Anthony Davis pick and pops. Okay, well,
they just didn't want to do it, you know.
Anthony
Davis and Russ were not going to be screening on that team, that's for sure.
AD's also like a pick and like fade to the elbow.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't get all the way.
Yeah.
On the line. So I mean, just again, like, and I think it was Blackburn who tweeted this out. Who does a great job, by the way.
Love Ryan here.
Great, fantastic. I think he said something like 50% of Dario's shots were from behind the 3-point line. I have his shot chart in here somewhere.
Oh yeah, here I'll get that.
That is an analytic.
Oh wow, that is actually like it makes sense that he was a Sixer now. Was that under Daryl Morey?
Yeah, isn't that just the most perfect shot chart you've seen? Threes are distributed all across the arc. It's all inside the arc. That's all him just driving closeouts and stuff like that. So he's a pretty clear, you know what you're getting, right, from him.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this is a guy that's going to pick and pop, and if he has the angle, we've seen him flash the handle a little bit. He can go behind the back. He's not dusting dudes off the dribble. He's not like a guy that's going to like sky for a dunk or anything like that. But you kind of know what you're getting from him in a way. So I think there's some comfort in that, and also comfort in being like, we think this is going to fit pretty well with what we like to do already. We don't have to change things too much. We have a guy who can screen, pop behind the arc, and just find guys in terms of cutters. So I've been excited about Dario before, you know, the Nuggets even signed him or reported to sign him. But
I wanted them to get him last year.
Yeah.
On record.
Yeah.
I may not be on record because I made my Twitter account like a year ago, but it was on my list.
Yeah, it's I think the biggest thing is like, probably the thing I didn't think about, and it wasn't till people started doing the like, all right, let's throw the rotations together, is like how much sense he makes for rotations and stuff like that. You know, I kind of viewed it as like, all right, I think I'd want somebody that's going to help on the glass and, you know, provide like real defensive infrastructure in the backup center. And then when I started looking at lineups, I'm like, boy, I don't really know how well, like, I don't really know if you want to, let's throw like Andre Drummond. Like, is Andre Drummond and Westbrook and like, is that really a cohesive bench unit? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that feels as cohesive.
Oh, well, I mean, I wanted Drummond, but that was before like Westbrook was like a in the distance possibility.
That's the thing,
I don't know that I like that fit.
I don't either. I don't really like that. So if you're penciling in Westbrook, you're like, oh, you would kind of make sense to have a guy that can space a little bit and, you know, set screens and like try to drag another guy or two guys out of the perimeter onto the perimeter. So once that kind of seemed like the Westbrook thing really seemed real and like there's like that's a possibility, somebody like Dario did make a lot more sense. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be certain things that bench unit has to do. Like the rebounding will be a key thing all year. Westbrook is a good rebounder, funny enough. But there are going to be like things that unit won't be as good at just inherently. But I do think like when you're looking at how everything's coming together, like it does make sense to have somebody like Dario, who is just a pure 3-point spacer.
Yeah, so if we are playing him, because there's been some like Dario Sarić diehard fans who are saying he is not a center. Do not play him at the 5 ever, because his defense on 5s is not good. But it's like you guys are saying, if we have a spacing 5 with Westbrook or just having a whole lineup that can space, it kind of doesn't matter whether like Duran's playing a 4, he's playing a 5. But I mean, defensive matchups are going to be more pertinent in that case. But if you do talk about him kind of at the 5 position, because I believe the last kind of clips that you pulled up are like some post up works. So it's like on offense, he can score in the post.
For sure.
But so if you want to talk about that a little bit, and then, defensive weaknesses or other weaknesses that maybe fans should be aware of that could like hamper the bench potentially.
Yeah. I think like the post up stuff is really enticing. I think he was 64th percentile or something like that. The Warriors, like a pretty good 1.01
for a backup big. That's just, yeah, that's good.
1.0,
that is better than like any half court offense the bench has had in years.
It's like real offense. Like you get real offense out of running things out of the post for him. He's been a good post player for a while. So like that's just another option. I think I included a couple of clips of him just like, this is against Fox, right? Yeah, like if he gets a small on him, like if you run this pick and pop between him and Westbrook or whoever, him and Jamal, and the other team switches, like he's just going to go straight down into the post. Again, feels a lot like Jokic, right? Like that's exactly the type of offense you're running. And then he's making reads from there. He's either trying to score himself or he's, dotting it out to the weak side, finding the shooter in the corner, finding the shooter on the in the slot. So it's just like, again, I'm going to keep saying it, but like there's such a sense of familiarity. You almost watch him and you're like, I'm surprised this guy isn't a Nugget, or like he hasn't been a Nugget already.
Yes.
It is funny.
I agree.
So there's a lot of familiarity in a way. Yeah, on defense, I mean, he's not like a crazy shot blocker. I think he's blocked somewhere in the 90s, like 90 total shots in his career. Rebounding was a little better than I figured. He's I think 70th, 80th percentile rebounder.
Especially good defensive rebounder.
Yeah, which is good. And that's important. You want your like backup center to clean up on the defensive glass.
Don't you?
Yes, you do. So I think that part is definitely going to get figured out. But that's where you have like somebody like Peyton, who's really good on the weak side. Holmes seems like he could be pretty good from the weak side. It's definitely unique, I think, to be like your defense, your bench defense be so, I don't say reliant, but I also don't really know what other word, but kind of like reliant on like weak side rotation. Yeah. But you also have like
it's the same thing with our starters when you think about it.
Yeah, like with Mike, and all that.
Right. And there's more to it too. I mean, there are obviously like, it goes into like how you're defending pick and rolls. Like they protect Nikola in so many different ways. And Nikola has like gotten a lot better at like
But like, don't put your big in space with an NBA guard. There's like, that's just dumb. Like no team should do that. So I don't care how good of a defender your center is in space. Like,
and they have like a lot of like, if this is a defense, and I see them like, for me, I do think they're going to, I mean, it's just me like guessing, honestly, I'm for looking at like the roster. I think they'll be pretty aggressive. Like we'll get a lot of traps on the ball, and just trying to get the ball out of the ball handler's hands. And that bench unit, like in theory is like young. It's got like a lot of energy to it. It should be able to rotate around. Peyton, like I look at him a lot defensively, and I think he's really like the same way that I was saying like Julian's so important for the offense on the bench because he's a movement shooter. He can space from so far out, which just gives like if you're running Westbrook, Šarić pick and roll, him being able to space 28 feet out is super important. Peyton's also so important because of his ability to like rotate, put out fires, and he did that a lot. I mean, I think Julian like also. That's another guy that's like in the right spots a lot. I've loved his low man rotations all year.
Yeah, like I like Julian's off-ball defense a lot too.
Loved him. So like
I'm really looking forward to that Nuggets knowledge about him.
Thank you. It's nerdy. But yeah, like in theory, if you're playing really aggressive, you have a guy who's like a total chaos agent in Peyton, and you have a guy in Julian who's like in the right spots a lot. Like that's the semblance of something like that. That is, so I can see how it would work in theory, but we'll see it put in like
We'll
practice,
find out.
you know?
Well, maybe it'll work because if they end up getting Russell Westbrook, that's another chaos agent on the floor, for better or worse. So with the re-signing of Vlatko, we have now 7 options in the front court with Vlatko, Dario, Holmes, Zeke, who's still on the roster, Aaron Gordon, Jokic, and Hunter Tyson. Half of the team is kind of 4.5s. I guess you could call Aaron like the only like true 4 there, and maybe Hunter Tyson's like a 3-4, but 4.5s and 5s, right? And I made this joke the other day that when you think about the lack of ball handling depth on the team now, it seems like Calvin Booth has gone sort of completely away from like Tim Conley's sort of proclivity for small skilled guards on the team in favor of like this very large front court, and that seems to be where a lot of the focus has been, especially this offseason. Does this sort of like extreme depth at like the forward and center positions tell you anything about how the front office was thinking about where they needed to target the deficiencies in this roster after last season?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it feels like pretty much like a reflection of, man, that Timberwolves team is really big. Let's just literally add more tall players. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to look at it. And again, like I think Booth has certainly like every year he kind of has like an archetype in mind. And I think that was like a big part of the evaluation process. I also just think having like the I'm going to call it interchangeability, or kind of just revolving chairs of the backup center, was not a situation that I think anybody wanted to go into.
Mhm.
You know, like, I mean, because it's like the only position like that last year where it felt like we were getting a different guy every couple of games. So I think having like a concrete option was the idea here, right? With Šarić or Holmes next to him or whoever, but like Šarić, really, I think just being that solid, we're going to have this backup 5, and just like you want to give Nikola a rest.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's like the biggest thing I was looking at, is giving AG a rest too, because we have been
AG,
saying AG is
Yeah.
going to be the backup 5 in the playoffs. It's all good, everyone, and it's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those units like crushed in the 2023 playoffs, and then last year they were like not effective at all. So
Can I tell you like what happened in the Wolves series? Because our bench was actually crushing them in the AG at center minutes until the second half of that series, when Chris Finch decided to start mirroring Rudy's minutes with AG's.
Yep.
And that made really all the difference, just because like Rudy provided that stabilizing presence. A lot of people don't think this, but on offense as well as the defense for the Wolves. And that made it a lot more difficult, and they had nothing else to go to. So once the starters were like losing their minutes and they started losing those AG at center minutes as well, it was pretty much curtains, as we saw.
I agree. It's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, Rudy. What's like Minnesota got away from like the Rudy, like that? What was that, game 5 where they're like?
It was game 5, yeah.
Oh,
Nikola
the one-on-one
like,
with Rudy. Yeah.
We
They
said in
had
our
a-
series
Masterclass.
preview, like they should not put Rudy on Jokic
Yeah.
in single coverage. That is not what they should do, and they
Yeah.
probably won't unless. And then that was what happened in game 5.
Right.
They didn't do it again, and I guess
Yeah.
they learned their lesson.
Unless they just thought Jokic was gonna like get 50 points in that game and be really tired in the next one, because he like had to score every single time, and maybe that did tire him out. But I would be surprised if that was like a strategy they
Well,
actually
the
used,
next
like
game, they
intentionally lose a
weren't-
game.
They were not leaving him in single coverage with anybody but like Cat, but even then they were helping
Mhm.
off of others. So
I blocked game 6 out. I truly could not tell you what happened in that game.
it was like 6 minutes, and then it was over. So we don't have to talk about that.
Yeah, we've been going with these forwards, but like Matt said earlier, like that's kind of Booth's thing with these skilled big men. And I think a lot of Nuggets fans were thinking we'd go for a more stereotypical 5, like true center option to spell Jokic, kind of like DJ but younger. But
Yeah.
I think as we see, we're going all like floor spacing, kind of, more small ball 5 bigs. Like even with Duran, even though he's 6'10", he can space, which I'm interested to see. But are you like concerned with, like, even if we added Russ, do we need? I mean, I know we have young guys like Trey Alexander and those players and Pickett.
Right.
Do you think that's enough to go into the season, or how are you feeling about where we're at on that front?
Yeah, I mean it's thin. Like I even just like the fact like the wings aren't like particularly, which I guess would be the interesting part about like Julian trying to
Yeah.
improve his ball handling, playmaking skills.
Yeah.
You saw Christian kind of experiment with that last year. I think there were things that he added that helped, but I also think like there was a lot of stuff thrown on his plate, and it felt like just the first couple of months, like he just kind of was like, there's so much newness to it that once things simplified for him, like once he had less responsibility, it's like, oh, there's Christian Brown. It was like, right? Like, so yeah.
But he was also on ball a lot less after things started to click because things
exactly
for him.
Right. And it became a little bit less of like, all right, we're going to have Christian Brown run pick and roll. It's going to be like, all right, Christian, like grab a rebound and like dribble it up. And then we're going to get, Jamal the ball after he's coming off ball. Right. So like, yeah, I definitely, I think for me, like, sure, like the point guard position is thin. And like, if Jamal gets hurt or whoever, like, then you're like, all right, like we need Westbrook to start. And then Pickett needs to be ready, honestly, like to play. We're going to see where all those guys are in the next week.
Mm-hmm.
I think the wings for me, just like, it's so valuable to have these 6'8" guys that are able to we talked about DeRozan at the top. DeRozan's like a guy that you can run a pick and roll. You can come off a handoff. He can make plays for other guys. He's what, 6'7", 6,
yeah, 6'6",
something like that. So there isn't a ton of that, and maybe the idea is like, yeah, like somebody like Julian can develop
Those
into
guys
that.
are hard to find. Secondary ball handling, secondary playmaking juice would have come in really handy this past year, and could come in handy this next year, depending on how much progress Christian makes with that, how much progress we see Julian make with that as well.
But I think that hits on like there is like for the roster to be optimized, there are going to be like little growth points that you're going to need from someone of one of the young guys. So I think that's where that kind of comes in and like ties all that together, is that like you do need some of those skills to show up, because right now you can make do with certain guys, but it's like I just don't know if that skill is like one that I would say is like a strength of the roster for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're seeing with through last offseason and this offseason, the way that roster building in the NBA more and more, because of the changes to the collective bargaining agreement, is becoming this, you're having to make choices about where to allocate your resources.
Right.
And it seems like the front court is a bigger priority right now. And on top of that, they are choosing to make these sort of calculated gambles on things like ball handling. Listeners, leave us a review. We're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, we're on Apple Music. Finally, it's awesome. Will did all of the things on the behind the scenes, and now you can listen to us anywhere. And always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.
True.